If you get hurt at work, what is up, everybody? You just hit the wrong button. What a way to start the show. Welcome to the Armchair Scouts. Today we are previewing week 5 of college football. Joining us, he is Ryan Reese at Philly Sports PSA. What's up, Ryan?
Oh, man, I thought I was having an aneurysm there for a second. Not much. Ready to talk about some great college football matchups, including one of the best matchups of the year for our game of the week.
And last but not least, of course, he is Mark Henry Jr. Go give him a shout out on X at Mark Henry Jr. _ It's good, Mark.
It's a really exciting week for college football. Probably the best of the year so far. Maybe I'm swayed just because of that big game that Ryan mentioned, but I think Georgia-Bama is the biggest game of the year so far. So even though I just forgot about it when we were talking about our game of the week segment.
Yeah, I think it's the first matchup between two top 5 teams this season. It's going to be a banger. We're going to be previewing top guys to know, our predictions and so forth in just a little bit. Eagles _ rules says, is Shane joining? No, not today. He's got some business to take care of. But comment with us, guys. We're going to be breaking it down. Let's jump right into our Eagles targets of the week in college football. Lead us off, Mark. Who is your guy for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I tried to cover someone in the Georgia-Alabama game, but apparently they'd already been covered. And it's kind of funny. I don't know if I just had Jalen Walker and who's the Williams defensive lineman for Georgia who hasn't played?
Michael Williams.
Michael Williams. I think I had them just rolled into one player in my brain as two different Georgia defensive linemen. So when I started watching the Jalen Walker tape from Kentucky, I wanted to talk about him. But if you're going to twist my arm, I guess I'll talk about a Notre Dame football player. Then I'll talk about Benjamin Morrison. And honestly, a large part of me thinks he probably is out of the Eagles' target range. I think he's probably a guy who goes in the top 10 to 15. I think the Eagles probably pick out of the top 10 to 15. I think the Eagles probably don't take a defensive back. But we know how this goes. Week 5 of college football, the draft board looks a lot different than it will in March or April. So worth covering a guy in that kind of mid-first round level. And I think Benjamin Morrison's a guy who, biased talk here from a Notre Dame fan, I think he belongs at the very top of the class of 2025, which is hard to say because, man, what an incredible quarterback class. You have Travis Hunter, obviously, Will Johnson. But I think Benjamin Morrison's right there. I think that they are 3 elite cornerbacks. And I think Benjamin Morrison is just as good as the others, even though he is only 6 foot. Obviously, you like him maybe be 6'2", 6'3", but he makes up for it by just having incredible ball skills. In 2022, as a true freshman, he was a 5-star, came in, 6 interceptions, played right away, was probably the best cornerback in the country in 2022. Had a follow-up year last year, fantastic, 3 interceptions last season. And so far, they're not throwing at him. They're throwing in opposite directions or they're running the football. He's been just as good this year, just not as many opportunities to make the game-changing plays that we've seen him make in the past. I know he has 18 targets against him with only 8 catches allowed so far. No touchdowns allowed for Benjamin Morrison so far on the season. And I know in that Texas A&M game, he was very, very good at blanketing their top receiver who was coming into the game with some buzz. So Benjamin Morrison is my kind of Eagles target to watch for the rest of the way. And they have a big game this week against Louisville.
Yeah, Louisville's good, man. They're sneaky.
They should win. Louisville should win that game.
Yeah, it's a great game. There's a lot of fun little matchups this week. Not some heavy hitters, but some fun matchups. Eagles rule says, do you think Harold Perkins comes out this year now with the ACL tear? He's out for the season. So I don't think so. I think he's a junior, right? So I think he probably most likely returns. Any thoughts on that?
It's hard for me to know. There's also part of the other side of the argument is you don't want to go back to school and get hurt again. And then that really kills your draft stock. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to know.
It sucks that we actually had a decent segment on Harold Perkins last week.
I know.
Thanks. I think he's a linebacker, and he's pound for pound one of the best athletes in this class without a doubt. Even with the ACL tear, but Willie says, who do you take with the first pick on Facebook? I am straight edge. I go the best player available at edge. What do you guys think?
Yeah, gotta be a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
And I would even double dip, to be honest. At this
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Honestly, they need all types of help down there. So
also, not to mention Jordan Davis played 29 snaps in week 5. And I know he looked good doing it. I actually thought it was one of his better games. Probably shows that that's probably the best way he's going to get used, which is kind of what I was yelling and screaming about 3 years ago. But I think he's probably a guy who plays 30 to 40% of the snaps, and his best used is just a pure run stuffer. He did have a sack last week, but I think that, it's very on the table for them to go with an inside pass rusher if that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm straight defensive line. There were some fun names, but all in all, I want a guy that's 6'5", 6'6", a guy that can set the edge, a well-balanced edge rusher, not just a fastball pass rush specialist. That's my take. A guy that can play all 3 downs.
That's absolutely crazy. Eagles rule just stole the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask where you guys think Deone Walker is going, and Dives and Ryan know from the group chat that I'm pretty obsessed with Deone Walker. I think he literally is my number 1 player from the 2025 draft right now. 6'6", 330. He's an absolute beast. I mean, there's tape of him eating up Osiris Torrance from a couple of years ago, even when he was a true freshman, that I saw kind of going around. He made a difference in that Georgia game for sure. I love Deone Walker. I don't know, where have the mocks kind of had him going?
I mean, the defensive line is the premier part of this 2025 draft. Looking at our preseason rankings, we did a show on this. Ryan, you had Deone Walker as your 4th best defensive lineman in the draft. I had him 7th best. But I think he's a first-round talent, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and this was preseason, heading into the season. So
yeah.
I'm sure this is. Yeah, I'm sure my rankings will have certainly changed on Walker as well. And yeah, I'd love him to fall to the Eagles, but I highly doubt that happens at this point.
Yeah, he was your DT2, Ryan, and he was my DT3. I had Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss as my DT2, another good name to know. But yeah, Deone Walker's terrific. Ryan, who's your Eagles target, Eagles draft prospect to know this week?
So with the recent struggles the Eagles have had about getting to the quarterback, I know for those of you who know me, I'm a linebacker and I'm a tight end guy. But I wanted to switch it up slightly today and go and attack the edge, as the Eagles clearly need help. And I went with Antoine Powell-Ryland out of Virginia Tech. This guy's tied right now for the college football leader in sacks with 5.5. He had a monster game against Old Dominion. Was just absolutely dominant. But this guy, kind of comes out, this year's draft coming up as he is a senior. He started at Florida, had a pretty successful career there and switched over to Virginia Tech. He's got a great explosive first step, able to easily beat tackles, really setting the edge. And really forcing quarterbacks to maneuver within the pocket. Great bend, great flexibility type of guy. And he's really versatile. He can kind of drop into coverage when need be, but really his super strength there is on the edge. And it obviously shows there in Virginia Tech. This is not a guy that's being, highly, touted right now. Obviously being tied for the league or the college lead in sacks right now is certainly going to get him some buzz. But I think he's athletic enough. I think he's has that, like I said, has that explosive first step, and man, that gives him such an edge getting to the quarterback. that I think his name is certainly going to rise come draft, come draft off season. But right now he's kind of a day 3 kind of guy, but I wouldn't, expect him to kind of rise up into that maybe beginning of day 3, end of day 2, when it all comes, said and done. He's just a guy that you just watch and you can tell he loves getting after the quarterback, and we need guys like that right now. So any help on that defensive line, and especially the edge position, the Eagles need to gather up many of those guys for this offseason.
It's a good one. I'm going to go with another high riser, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's what I do on these shows.
True.
It's a guy that's not even playing this week, but I feel like we've had enough sample size to talk about this guy dominating college football. We're going to go to South Carolina, and we're going to talk about Kyle Kennard, who is arguably the biggest winner so far at his position through the 2024 college football season. Through 4 games, he's got at least half a sack in every game. He's got 5.5 sacks, number 1 in the SEC. He's got 17 pressures, 10 quarterback hurries, 8.5 tackles for loss. Oh, by the way, that mark is number 2 in the entire nation. He's got 2 forced fumbles. He's got 0 missed tackles. As a prospect, he's big, and that's what I want for the Eagles. I want a big guy at 6'5". He has big time athleticism, a motor that's off the charts. He's a guy like Ryan's guy, probably a guy that dominates the Senior Bowl circuit, gets into that day 1 consideration. So Kyle Kennard, man, great get off, fast hands, advanced pass rush moveset. He's the leader of a South Carolina defensive front that's hungry. It's deep. It's uber talented. It's got another high riser, a true freshman that we'll probably be talking about in the very near future on that D-line. So South Carolina, man, they don't play anyone this week. They have a bye, but they do have an epic matchup with number 6 Ole Miss on the horizon on October 5th, which might rival Ohio State versus Iowa for our game of the week. That's another conversation for later. But keep an eye on Kyle Kennard as a guy that keeps on rising. And all signs point to this guy being the potential Bronco Nagurski award winner. So Kyle Kennard, if you haven't heard of him, you just did, because go check him out. He is putting up crazy numbers.
Could be Missouri A&M if A&M gets the job done against Arkansas this week. It's kind of a weird week next week.
Yeah.
But by the way, 6'5" edge rusher with sack production. I'm in.
Exactly.
You know how that works.
We were literally fighting about it in the chat going forward. I technically I had him first and I conceded. So
you guys know I have a type.
Yeah.
Have you all done much research on the Penn State backs or Phil Maffa from Clemson? Big fan of, big fan. Well, running backs or defensive backs? If we're talking defensive backs, big fan of Kevin Winston Jr. In that round 2 for the Philadelphia Eagles, a safety with 6'2", great length, great athleticism, big Kevin Winston Jr. fan. Yeah, another guy that I'll fall in love with and the Eagles will never touch. Phil Maffa's putting up crazy numbers. I haven't looked into him that much lately, but I know Clemson's kind of getting it together a little bit.
When he said Penn State backs or Phil Maffa, I kind of assumed running backs because he said Maffa. But Singleton's eligible this year, right? To come out?
Yes, he should be. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Singleton's an NFL guy. I think that guy runs like an NFL running back. So he's a guy I expect to be kind of probably like a day 2 guy.
Yeah, running backs loaded this year. There's a lot of really fun running backs.
Except no one told Ollie Gordon.
Yeah. Yeah, what a year he's having.
Resting on his laurels there.
Yeah,
or resting on his laurels.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's been miserable. What a horrible.
Yeah, it's been a rough start for Ollie Gordon, but you got Quinshon Judkins, Nicholas Singleton, Amari Hampton, Ashton Genty we'll be talking about tonight. Jaden Ott's really good. RJ Harvey we'll be talking about tonight. I think the fun winner of the year at running back is Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, just putting up ridiculous numbers. And Iowa plays Ohio State in a couple weeks. That's going to be a great matchup too. So keep an eye out for that. Let's get to our player of the week prediction. I'll throw it to you, Ryan. Who are you going with for your player of the week?
So I kind of wanted to go a little bit outside of the box here and just kind of looking at, a high profile match because I feel like I've picked a lot of guys that have just, have just destroyed their opponents and they don't end up, putting up that good of numbers. But so I'm going with Woody Marks, the running back out of USC. They got a really tough matchup against, a decent Wisconsin team here, and Marks has put up pretty good numbers so far this year. 271 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's gotten 100 yards in 2 of his 3 games. One against Michigan, who has a very good defense, and last week he only had 68 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. So he's still very effective. This is a guy that I think just is kind of slowly bursting onto the scene here. In last year, he only, again, didn't really have much over the last actually 2 years, a little over 500 yards here, but now he's the head guy there at USC. And, he's already averaging almost 8 yards a clip. He's got averaging 100 yards and a touchdown pretty much every game here. So, I look for Woody Marks to punish that Wisconsin defense that has been a little suspect against the run at times. So, and I do look for this game to be a little closer, so that way, he'll actually be able to play the whole game and put up some stats. So I might be able to win one.
Ryan, you go with some deep cuts, man. Theo Weiss Jr., Josh Hoover, Woody Marks. Respect.
Kind of what I do. I like the guy nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah. I like Josh Hoover. They disappointed me. I bet big on TCU, and their defense is the worst of all time.
Yeah, bad. Yeah, they got lit up by SMU last week.
Yeah, that's it.
Mark, who is your player of the week prediction?
Well, Dives used him last week. I'll go to the well this week. I'll use Ashton Jonty. He's been just unbelievable. I mean, you look at every game, he's been good in every single one of them. And I think that he is still, in my opinion, the rightful Heisman favorite. You look at the 3 games, he's rushing for 10.5 yards a carry. He's got 9 touchdowns on the ground in 3 games. It's absolutely unbelievable. He's averaging 195 yards per game. I think he's absolutely an NFL guy at the next level. And you look at his matchup for this week, and while Washington State is a fun story, 4-0 in the Pac-2 over there, the 2-pack, but you look at last week's game, they went to double overtime with San Jose State, and San Jose State's running backs went 16 carries for 125 yards. Watch out for this week, because I think Boise on the blue field at 10 o'clock at night drops it on Washington State. I like Boise -7, but laying the touchdown, and I think Ashton Jonty's the biggest reason why.
Dude, he's so good, man. I think he's got first round pick written all over him, and that's hopefully he stays in the game, because I had Ashton Jonty last week, and he only had 11 touches. He went for 127 yards. But he didn't play much.
I think they'll need him a little bit more this week. At least Washington State they're a good offense. Like I do think Washington State will score. So I think they'll need him at least a little bit more again than Portland State.
Yep. I am going to go up next, and the guy I'm talking about is, I think, right up there with talks to be RB1 in college football. We're going to go RJ Harvey out of UCF. He's putting up some monster numbers this year. UCF had a bye week last week. They took down TCU 35-34 in the Big 12 conference opener 2 weeks ago. You look at RJ Harvey, who literally put the team on his shoulders. UCF doesn't really have much of a passing game, but man, RJ Harvey on the ground is as elite as it gets. He's got 3 games this year of at least 100 rushing yards. 2 weeks ago, he had 187 yards on 29 attempts. Over the year, 9 total touchdowns and he's going toe-to-toe with Iowa's Caleb Johnson for pretty much all these stats. As a prospect, he entered the year as an underrated guy. You can now officially throw that out the window. He's got UCF rolling. UCF takes on Colorado this week, and I expect that to be a pretty high-scoring game. And I expect RJ Harvey to get a lot of touches and kind of carve up that bad Colorado defense. So RJ Harvey is a fun one to know. And if you're looking for some big numbers, make sure you check out RJ Harvey. We have a comment. Thoughts on Jalen Catalone having a career resurgence. Eagles, I love this comment. Like, this is a guy that I have been talking about for years. Jalen Catalone, like, I feel like he just never put it together. He's been a top recruit. He's a guy that I was really high on back when he played for Arkansas and then went to Texas and never really came together. But good for him to get it going. So, yeah.
Two things. UNLV, sneaky group of 5 contender to get that 12th playoff spot, by the way. A big win against Kansas. Not a really, really tough schedule down the stretch. I'm pretty sure they have a big game this week. I'm not sure who they're playing, but UNLV, a fun team to watch. Also, RJ Harvey, one of the best players in the college football video game, an absolute beast. Just an absolute speed demon. You use him with KJ Jefferson, little read option. Really, really fun team to play with, UCF.
Love it, man. I haven't played NCAA 25 in a minute. I need to get back at it.
I just kind of have gotten back on the grind. I've obviously been traveling for work, but I'm home now. I'm winning a couple national championships.
By the way, it's Fresno State for UNLV this week.
Yes.
And you're right. I haven't as well. I need to start the three-peat for Pitt. So it's got to get on that.
There you go.
I was playing it for a while, then I started to get back into Dead Space. I've been enjoying the Dead Space remake. It's pretty solid.
The reason I know is I started my career with UCF. I was like, that's a fun, middling kind of Power 5 team to start your career with. I went to Notre Dame. I've won like 4 national titles now. So I'm hoping to get a fun new offer to kind of spread my wings and go elsewhere. But
there you go.
Nothing enticing yet.
No. We have another comment. Have you all looked at DeMonte Capehart, defensive tackle that comes? Can't talk on him, but I will check him out for sure. Let's get into our game of the week preview. That is Georgia at Alabama. Lots to dissect in this one. We already talked about Georgia in previous weeks. Mark, do you want to lead us off here? Or do you want to go?
Sure. I don't know if it's because I've got a dog here sitting in my lap, but I'm calling on the dogs here. Oh, I'm going with Georgia. I love Georgia in this game. Dives has the dog there too. I don't know if has Dives seen the Texas A&M dog Reveille?
No.
Oh, you have to check it out. It's awesome. It's very. I'm pretty sure it's a border collie. Really, you have to check it out. They treat her like the queen on campus. It's very, very funny. But same thing with Uga. I think they're on Uga 11 now at Georgia, and he's treated like a king on campus. And I think he's going to be a king in Tuscaloosa when Georgia goes in there and wins on the road. I like Georgia -1.5, which is where the number's at. This is my favorite bet of the college football season so far.
Really?
I love that we're kind of getting an overreaction from obviously I think they both had a bye this last week. The last game that they both played, Georgia struggled at Kentucky. And I think people are really overreacting to that game. Georgia has that type of game kind of in the early part of their SEC schedule every single year. Look at what they did against Clemson. And Clemson, since that game, has not looked bad. So that Clemson win for Georgia, where they totally shut them down, kind of looks better and better the farther we get from it. I think Georgia's defense, I mean, even last week with how they struggled against Kentucky, it was the offense. The defense was still fantastic. Yeah. I think that defense is going to shut Alabama down. Jalen Milroe, really, really good player. Kalen DeBoer, really good coach. They just don't have the special guys at the skill positions that they used to. I mean, We're doing this every week. We're talking about players of the week. We're talking about Eagles targets. What Alabama skill position guys are we talking about and covering? What?
I have covered them.
What? Who was it? What's his name? Is it Ryan Williams or?
Ryan freaking Williams.
But what's he in terms of his draft? He's a true freshman, right?
He's a true freshman, a Devontae Smith clone. Small but lightning fast. Great separator.
I know he's got some Jared McCain in him with the fingernails.
Big time vertical threat. Fits that Jalen Milroe, short, deep offense to a T. He doesn't have many catches this year, but I think he has like 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's just a lot to rely on for a true freshman in this type of game. That's going to be physical with Georgia's, SEC defense and, Malachi Starks in the secondary and obviously a bunch of corners who are probably going to be NFL guys in the future. So I just look at I look at the guys that are around Carson Beck on Georgia's offense, and I feel a lot better about that. And I know what I'm getting out of Georgia's defense. It feels like an overreaction to Georgia really struggling offensively against Kentucky. And it feels like an overreaction to an Alabama team going into Wisconsin and winning a big national TV game. I think a lot of people look at that and they're like, oh, Wisconsin, pretty good team. I think Wisconsin stinks. I think they stunk with Tyler Van Dyke, and their starting quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, got hurt in the first quarter of that game. And Alabama then can kind of pour it on against their backup quarterback. I think that win looks a lot better on paper than it necessarily is. So I think there's a big overreaction here on the line. Love Georgia outright in this game.
Love it. Tyler Van Dyke. That's another name. Hyped up player that I remember making highlight reels of. Just like Jalen Catalon, I was excited to see what he was about and never delivered on that. Never.
He started at Miami, and he's at Wisconsin now. Was there a place in between?
I think there was.
That's so funny now that we have guys who have 3-4 teams in college football and it's supposed to be 4 or 5 years. It's so funny, but why am I blanking? This is probably bad radio. I apologize to the people.
No, it's just Miami. Just Miami.
Oh, okay. Maybe I think that because he had 2 different coaches there where Cristobal came in. But yeah.
All right. Ryan, you're up, man. Who do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, listen, I think, obviously, Georgia is, a big powerhouse, but again, you talk about having, a Georgia defense that's going to have a lot of, top picks. Well, Bama's still going to have some of those top picks. They just might be a little bit younger right now. And we obviously just talked about Ryan Williams, but I truly think he can be an absolute X factor and will have Georgia respecting him as a deep threat. And I think that's going to be exactly what Jalen Milroe and that Alabama offense is exactly looking for, because that'll leave them space and they're kind of 2-headed running back in Jam Miller and Justice Haynes to kind of operate in space. And that's exactly how they are going to beat that, vaunted Georgia defense there. I think this game is going to be just a slugfest back and forth. And honestly, I think with Alabama scoring at least 42 points in every game, and again, you can talk about who they're playing, but Georgia just hasn't looked that crisp. And they have all the talent in the world, and they embarrassed Clemson in the week 1, but again, I am putting stock into the fact that they struggled with Kentucky, and Kentucky's not a bad team by any means, but that's a team that they should still dominate. And if they play anything like that, Alabama's going to whoop up on them dogs. I do have Bama winning a close one here. But let's not forget that regardless of, Georgia's success, Alabama has won 8 out of the last 9 matchups, including during one championship matchup too. So roll Tide.
I am right there with you, Ryan. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Bama wins it. And it's really interesting too, because these are 2 teams the Eagles heavily emphasized during the draft process. And it truly will be the Alabama offense versus the Georgia defense as expected. We have to touch on Jalen Milroe. just really quick. He is putting together just a Heisman-esque season so far, very early on, but he's right behind Jackson Dart, Nico Iamaleava. He's putting up crazy numbers. Cam Ward, he's right there, man. He is got one of the best deep balls in the game. He's obviously an elite athlete. And speaking of this elite Georgia defense, it also helps that Alabama has one of the best offensive lines in the country. Alabama has Parker Brailsford, who is one of the best centers in college football. He was a transfer out of Washington. He is, I believe, coming back from injury. So that's definitely a name to watch out for. They also got a couple other day two guys in Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts, 6'5", 6'6", massive interior offensive linemen. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And then when it comes to the defense, I mean, there's a long list of Alabama guys to know, like Deontay Lawson, linebacker. But I think a big guy to know is Keon Saab. Keon Saab is a 6'1" safety transfer out of Michigan. He didn't get a lot of playing time. He's putting up some crazy numbers so far this season. He was already named SEC Defensive Player of the Week prior. So keep an eye out for Keon Saab. And then when you get to Georgia, it really is all about that defense. I mean, Malachi Starks is everything. He is as elite as it gets, by far safety number one in this draft. We talked about this, Ryan, previously, but I think he's pound for pound a top 10 talent in the 2025 NFL draft. He won't probably be taken given the position at safety, but I think he's right there, man. I think if you were to compare and contrast safety prospects in years past, we're talking about one of the better playmakers in the country. And then we get to some other interesting guys. But the guy I want to highlight, especially when defense versus Jalen Milroe, is Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker, we've already covered him on previous shows, but once more, 6'2", 245 pounds. He is the Swiss Army knife of this Georgia defense. He does it all, man. He plays different roles. For example, so far this season, he's played 53 snaps at edge, 37 snaps in the box, and then even a couple snaps as a slot corner. Man, this guy has been everything for the Georgia Bulldogs defense. An amazing athlete. Doesn't have a lot of size, but just as an athlete that can match Jalen Milroe's legs, keep an eye out for Jalen Walker. I do think Alabama wins this one. I'm a big Alabama guy. So I wish we had Shane's pick on this. But any thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, I think you guys are wrong. No, but a lot of talk about Jalen Milroe. Carson Beck's having a better year. Carson Beck has more passing yards. He has one less passing touchdown. He has a better QBR so far on the season. They played the two best opponents on Georgia's schedule would be the two best opponents on Alabama's schedule, meaning Clemson and Kentucky. And you look at Alabama, I know that they beat USF 42-16. They were up 14-13 with 9 minutes left in that game. And I know that sounds crazy, but they won the last 9 minutes of that game 28-3. The first 51 minutes of that game against South Florida, they were only won 14-13. That's more concerning to me than winning a 13-12 game on the road at Kentucky. I think that the Alabama offense and the Georgia offense are even, and I think the Georgia defense is head and shoulders above. That's why I'm going with Georgia. And the reason that another kind of thing to talk about, Trevor Etienne missed that Clemson game and even missed that, and even only played 5. He had 5 carries in the Cupcake game. He got involved a little bit in that Kentucky game, 19 carries for 79 yards. He only had 4.2 yards per carry in that game. But now he had a week off. And I think 2 weeks off, 2 weeks removed from football, he had time to rest on that. I think we're probably going to see a healthy dose of Trevor Etienne. We're going to kind of see the guy that everyone expected as one of the biggest transfers in the country.
Yeah. 2 other names to watch. I know they're fighting 3 guys for Georgia to watch because they're fighting injury is Tate Ratledge. I don't know his health status heading into this week, but he is a top-notch interior offensive lineman. Oscar Delp, I think, is fighting an injury. I could be wrong. Another top tight end. And then Michael Williams, who had a ankle sprain and has missed some games, but he is a top-notch prospect to watch as well. Yeah. Just looking at the numbers real quick, Mark, Jalen Milroe has around 750 yards, 14 touchdowns, and then Carson Beck has about 730 yards, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, you're including the rushing. Yeah. I guess Beck's had a better passing year. Milroe's obviously a better runner for sure.
Sure.
It's a great year for the Heisman, man.
That's a dive. Sneak one past the
yeah, he was sneaking in the rushing yards and the rushing touchdowns there, sneaking it in a little bit. But no, I don't think either of these guys are going to win the Heisman. To be quite honest with you, I still think it's gonna come down to Cam Ward, Ashton Jonty, Nico Yamalieva. Nico took a step back, I guess. Tennessee was so vanilla last week.
Yeah, for a freshman, that's a hard environment to go into.
Yeah.
Or not a freshman. He's a sophomore. Sorry. I keep thinking he's a freshman.
Well, is he a redshirt freshman technically? Because I know he played the end of last year.
I thought he was a redshirt, no?
I know he played the bowl game, but that might still count as a red shirt. He might be a redshirt freshman, which is why you might have said that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. Yep. He's awesome, though. I think he's pound just one of the best prospects overall in this year's college football season. I think he's got top pick written all over him down the line.
Well, that's why it was so frustrating watching that Oklahoma game, because it felt like Tennessee was able to throw the ball whenever they wanted, and they kept run. I forget what the stat was. They ran like 60, 70, 80% of their plays were runs in that game. Yeah. And that's why it was frustrating. But I know it's difficult. They were trying to ease him into it.
They're protecting the kid.
Yeah. He is listed officially as a redshirt freshman.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go, Dives. You were right.
Yeah. All right. That about wraps it up. Let's do final thoughts on week 5. Plugs. Ryan, time's yours, man. Lead us off.
Yeah, there's obviously we just talked about the Georgia and Alabama game, but there's a lot of great matchups this weekend. A lot of top 25 matchups as well, and a lot of conference matchups. So one I'm certainly going to be watching is Penn State, number 9, against Illinois at number 19. I think that's going to be a nice first real test for Penn State. I think the line might be somewhere at like 18, but still, I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. So watch out for that. I don't know. This was, this was fun. I certainly am going to be glued to the TV all weekend, as I normally am. But other than that, you could find me normally. I don't know, but schedules are all over the place this week. But normally Mondays, I have a couple of shows on the Edge of Philly Sports Network, the Philly Sports Alliance Network, and the Eagles Pinpool Network. So I'm on one of those 3. So you can always find me there. So, and you can always, just hit me up there.
There it is. At Philly Sports PSA on X. Mark, time's yours, man. Final thoughts, plugs.
Usually I drop my favorite bet of the week, but I've talked about the 2 of them. It's Georgia and probably Boise as my 2 favorite bets this week. But if I had to throw one more out there, and it's kind of just a team to watch in general, the 4-0 Indiana Hoosiers, they should be ranked. Put them in the top 25. I'm buying in on Coach Siggs, Coach Signetti. I think he's really cooking something special there in Indiana. And I think you look at that schedule, 6.5-point favorite against Maryland. I'm laying the 6.5 this week. They go to Northwestern next week. I think this team's going to be 6-0 going into a big home matchup against Nebraska in week 7 on October 19th. And it's a shame that week is loaded with top 25 matchups. So that'll have no chance of being our game of the week, but it could still be a big time matchup.
That's a really good one. I'm going to go matchup to watch: Arizona versus Utah. Utah had a gutsy win last week without Cam Rising. They relied on a true freshman, and it's in Utah. T-Mac, Ted McMillan versus Utah could be a really fun matchup to watch. Utah's defense with Lander Barton, and you can go on and on. That Utah defense is legit. So I'm excited to see what T-Mac is all about. And that's what I think there's going to be a lot of NFL scouts watching how T-Mac handles this Utah Utes defense. So if you love the NFL draft, I put around like 6 to 7 winners of the week shorts with highlight reels and analysis. You can go check that out. And if you love the Philadelphia Eagles, I put out a crazy amount of highlight reels and things together with that as well. So guys, thank you everyone for watching. He is Mark Henry. Go check him out on X at Mark Henry Jr. _. Go check him out at Fox Sports The Gambler. Saturday at
11 to 1.
11 to 1 with Sean Bernard. It's an amazing show. He is Ryan Reese of Philly Sports Alliance. I am Dives at Mr. Crockpot. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday for Armchair Scouts, for Ryan, for Mark, for myself. Stay awesome, everyone.
And Chase.